We will be live now.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think this is such a great moment for me, and to be, speaking to somebody who is part of the loyalty industry and has a great say in what he follows, and that's customer loyalty. And to be here doing this webinar today. A very warm welcome and good afternoon to everybody who has joined the webinar today. My name is Nagamitra, and I'm currently working as the growth manager at Frugal.ai. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome our today's guest, considering he has worked for some of the best brands in India, serving them customer loyalty and ensuring customer analytics are right in place and serving them the best customer experience. A very warm welcome, Mr. Sanjeev. It's really good to have you today here.
Thank you so much, Mitra. It's great to be here.
Great. So I've gone through your profile, and while I was trying to understand how to write this interview session that I wanted to have with you, I've understood that nothing beats customer experience, right? If you see post-pandemic, things have been a little bit wobbly and wonky for our customers when they're trying to shop online. And nothing matters right now than brand loyalty, customer loyalty, and customer experience. So in your understandings in the recent times that you've seen, what were the brands that worked out the best for you in terms of customer loyalty, which gave you like a unforgettable positive experience?
So I think traditionally loyalty has been the stronghold of two particular verticals. And these are traditionally airlines and hospitality. I mean, if you think of the best experience you would have had from a loyalty perspective, an airline will come to mind only because of the fact that the experience begins right from the time you enter the airport. Travel has always been very, very inconvenient, and loyalty programs have tried to address that issue by making it as comfortable as possible. So whether it's avoiding waiting in long lines at a check-in counter, or giving you lounge access just so that you're able to have a comfortable wait, and then even boarding, the simple act of boarding, right? Rather than you getting in line with a whole bunch of people, you get to board whenever you want to board. So I think from an experience perspective, the airlines sort of set the benchmark.
Yeah.
And I think hospitality then took that a little forward. And that's sort of becoming more prevalent right now, because what a lot of hospitality companies are doing is that while this was being done even pre-pandemic, it's sort of taken on new proportions post-pandemic, where you literally just walk into your room. So check-in is via a mobile app. You walk, your room number shows up on the mobile app. You walk up to your room, you scan your mobile at the door, and you're in. All of this was unheard of, but then new technologies every day. So yeah, that's what it is.
Okay. So, I mean, even I had a very similar great experience. Something which we don't kind of notice is recently I've been to Decathlon, where they were, and I love Decathlon. It's just like a paradise for somebody who's into fitness. So when I was shopping and after taking a couple of products, I went to the counter and he said, "Ma'am, if you have the Decathlon app." So I said, "Yes, I do have." So he said, "You don't have to come to the billing counter. Once you're done with your shopping, you can just scan the code of the product and you can pay it wherever you're standing." I was extremely shocked because ideally there are long waiting lines no matter which Decathlon that I would go to, and that kind of set the tone for me, and I really loved it because nobody is there. You don't have to wait in queues. Things are done way faster and you can figure it out by yourself. So it was such a great experience. So if I have to put it this way, we do believe, and I think you agree with me, that customer experience is the pillar for brand loyalty. So in that case, in your opinion, is customer experience in store or digitally enough, or do you think there's more to it than your workspace or your online space?
You know, what you said was very interesting. You love the brand Decathlon. You would have gone up to the counter and you'd have paid, and you wouldn't have said that you had a bad experience. You said you'd have had a great experience by virtue of the fact that you were in Decathlon, right? Now what they did was they gave you this little nudge to do something that you thought was brilliant, and they upped the ante for you.
Yes.
Now loyalty in its traditional sense honestly no longer exists. What has started to happen is a lot of loyalty professionals are now becoming consumer experience professionals. And that is because we've realized very, very fast that there is no loyalty without providing great consumer experience. I'll take the example of the company I used to work for, right? Raymond. You walk into Raymond. they have phenomenal fabric. You can't come. I mean, there's nothing that comes close to the kind of fabric that Raymond's got. Uh, you purchase a fabric, you give it for tailoring. Now, let's say your garment is delayed for whatever reason, right? That's not great experience. How are you going to drive loyalty on the virtue of that? You think giving points to someone is going to solve that problem? It's not. Those days are gone. Uh, However, what will happen is that let's say that, and this has actually happened, right? Where someone was getting his suit stitched, and he was getting it stitched for his wedding. Now, in tier 2, 3, and 4 towns, Raymond is looked upon as a brand with a halo around it, and rightly so. Um, People actually look up to Raymond. The brand holds great value, and for some reason, that suit was delayed. This person had to travel overnight and get to the place where he was getting married. What the store manager did was he told the customer that, sir, you leave. I will ensure that the suit reaches you at your wedding. Now, despite the fact that the garment was delayed, the store manager managed to find a way to get that garment altered, delivered to his store in time, then took it personally and had it delivered before the start of the wedding. Now, while the start of that experience wasn't great, right? The fact is you promised him something, it was not done on time. However, service recovery was great. Now, these have become things that we talk about in a lot of forums where ideally that situation should not have arisen in the first place. To the customer himself believes that it was great experience on the part of Raymond that they actually delivered it to my wedding. Again, point is it should not have happened in the first place.
Yeah.
So what a customer perceives as great experience is sort of what we as brands try to deliver all the time. So what you said, the example that you brought out with Decathlon itself, it was not something you were expecting. You were absolutely fine to get into queue to make the payment, but no, Decathlon told you something which sort of completely took your experience to a whole new level. So that's what we're always trying to deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of agree with you because a couple of products that I've always enjoyed, Amazon, when they've gone above and beyond. When I mentioned a small hiccup in one of the books in the earlier webinars, I did mention that I love to read books, and the Amazon bookmarks made a big mark on me every time I opened a package, and it was waiting for me. But sometimes when I wouldn't find it, I used to get upset. So I used to call Amazon specifically to let them know this kind of irked me. So the next time what they did was they sent me a mail with about 10 to 15 of their best bookmarks that they could give it to me. And they personally addressed it to me. And I think that itself, it kind of made me forget why I was angry in the first place. Rather, it replaced with a greater feeling with the brand like Amazon. But if we have to tell right now, it's a competition, right? Like your small scale business owners versus your incumbent brands. So as a small scale business owner, what do you think, how do you think they can, beat the incumbent in order to set their customer experience in place?
Well, I think there's space for both. From the perspective that, see, what you said about Amazon is sort of unique to Amazon from the perspective that I don't see too many other big box retailers, or for that matter, even large e-commerce players do something like that. Amazon has figured out a way to do it at scale. With smaller retailers, I think the issue is I think the way they're able to beat all of this is to actually focus on providing superior customer experience. My father has run an optical store in Chennai for the last 30 years, right? We have literally 3 generations of the same family shop with us. People who moved out of the city, people who moved out of the country, they continue shopping with us. There have been times when I have been in the store where people come to my dad and tell him that, look, the reason we come here is because you're able to provide great experience. And great experience in his case is just him being there and talking to every single customer. Now, there is an issue with that, whereas the issue being the fact that you're not able to scale. But that's the whole point of being a small retailer, right? You're not looking at scale. If you were looking at scale, you would become maybe not an Amazon, but gets sort of halfway there. So the best thing that you can do is focus on customer experience and delight.
In that case, my question to you would be: would it be enough to provide that kind of customer experience just at the store? Let's say if they're shopping online, just on their online platform, is it enough, right, to build? So when I come onto the platform and I do my shopping bit and then I move out, should the customer experience stop there, or should it extend to another aspect of a customer journey? What do you think about that?
So ideally, if you're able to provide that customer experience outside of your experience with that brand itself, it speaks volumes. I'll give you an example. For instance, at Raymond, right? At Raymond itself, uh, the issue was that while we were giving points to the customer, uh, a customer will tend to shop at Raymond about 4 or 5 times a year at best. So in our mind, we were always trying to understand what is it that we can do outside of the Raymond ecosystem itself that will that will put the brand Raymond in the mind of the customer all the time. So while we looked to provide these interventions at different points in time, we were sort of building our program to get there. We weren't able to execute in time. It's probably still being built, but when I left, it hadn't been delivered, and it was also delayed because of the fact that the pandemic struck. But the intent, like I said, is that 5 times a year is only going to do so much. If you go shopping with your family, right, you'll probably go to a department store like a Lifestyle or a Shoppers Stop, by virtue of the fact that it offers it offers apparel for your entire family, and it offers multiple categories. Whereas in Raymond, you're sort of confined to menswear. So which is why we wanted interventions across. So you're absolutely right. You're always looking to be conscious in the mind of the customer, always top of mind, and the only way you can do that is by being present across.
So in that case, in your experience with implementing customer experience management for Raymond's, how was the journey looking like? What did you do in order to achieve that goal?
We started off very small. So when I joined Raymond, we actually had about 5 different call centers operating. Each brand had their own call center. Our largest channel, which was the Raymond shop, had its own call center. Our loyalty program, Raymond Rewards, had its own call center. So we were looking to move. We were looking to move vendors and sort of improve the quality of experience at the call center itself. What we did was we actually combined all of these call centers into one. We also then aggregated sources of feedback. So online reputation management, we do this thing where right after a purchase is completed, we send out a message to the customer asking us to rate us on a bunch of parameters. Now, all of these were isolated. We combined all of them into one call center with the intent being that you need to have one view of the customer across all his interactions with Raymond. So let's assume that let's say he puts up a post on Facebook saying that he had an issue at a particular store. He then calls the call center and repeats the exact same thing, right? Now, what does that do to the consumer? It annoys him. The fact that he has to repeat it multiple times. He'll probably go to a Raymond shop, buy a Color Plus product, raise a concern about Color Plus with the Color Plus call center and with the Raymond shop call center. Intent was combine all of these, one view of customer. You're able to address his problems much more quickly, and the call center will then be the liaison between within Raymond itself. So that was one of the simplest things we did. What we also did then was we said, let's take it one step further and resolve these problems much quicker, as in stop it from escalating into a problem. So we were India's first apparel retailer to actually go live on WhatsApp. So a whole bunch of customer queries a customer was able to resolve purely by just logging on to our channel on WhatsApp.
So I think in that way, right, I think trying to offline, online kind of a synchrony where customer tries to leave a feedback online, but you go and get in touch and get things altered, where he can again get in touch with you easily without having to go through the hassle of call center is a great customer experience, like we said. So to establish these kind of experience, or what according to you would count as the bare minimum for a brand to do in order to set these positive customer experiences in place?
So honestly, I don't think these are positive customer experiences anymore. I think this is bare minimum for a customer to expect in today's scenario. For that, I mean, you need the technology to be able to support you. And from that perspective, I think we sort of started to put that entire structure in place. Raymond was on this journey to revamp their entire tech stack, right from the ERP to their MarTech stack. And all these things that we did were sort of building blocks to get to where we wanted to be. We were also in the process of moving the loyalty program internal to Raymond, with the intent being that it allows you for faster turnaround time, faster time to market for campaigns, for anything that you want to run. I think another interesting thing that we did was, so the post-purchase feedback that I was talking about, we made it a point for every customer who left anything remotely close to a negative feedback to be reached out to, asked what his problem was, resolve his problem, and then update the fact that this problem was resolved.
Wow.
And this was tracked across the company right up to the CEO in reviews with him. So this was, yeah. So customer. I, I mean, I won't say customer delight, because at some point this just became hygiene for us. That was always something that everyone in the company looked at.
Okay. So I believe what also I think you're also trying to say is the fact that feedback is something which is often underrated and sometimes neglected by any brand. That's what even I have seen personally. So reaching out, and even it's right in our hands. Like for any brand, that's the first tool that they have access to that can be used to make major changes in any brand. So I think utilizing your feedback tool and feedback management itself is a big start, right? So
Absolutely.
apart from this, from like in a digital world or post, like during pandemic world that we are currently living in, things have gone digital, everything is now online, right? So in that case, creating a customer experience is a very tricky subject. So if you're in store, you can build an immersive experience, you can walk them through, from your salesperson greeting you and the way your visual merchandising is done. So things are run in a certain order, which is lost when you are online, because all you have to show is give a chance for the customer to see every product on your app or on the website. So in your opinion, how can we beat this digital era, or how do we take it as an advantage right now and build a customer experience that can create value to the customer?
So I think what becomes key in this new era is personalization. Uh, I think gone are the days where you're able to show a customer a laundry list and expect him to go through everything to try and find out what it is that he wants. Attention spans have reduced drastically ever since everything has gone online. So your ability to understand what the customer is looking for, uh, the entire proposition hinges on that. So if a customer comes to your page, you're lucky if he browses 3 pages, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't find anything he likes within the first couple of pages, he usually drops off. So therefore, what becomes important is in a scenario like Raymond, for example, is to understand what he had bought with us, and therefore what he is most likely to buy next, and put that recommendation right up there for him, so that you're able to reduce the amount of time he spends with you, but also prove to him that, look, I know what you're looking for, and give him the chance to exit that journey very, very quickly, and also give him what he wants.
Yeah,
We do something, yeah. So we do something very similar with Z5 also. We're very, very focused on personalization. Uh, I mean, you log on to a Netflix today, Netflix tells you the percentage uh, similarity to content that you watched earlier, which is exactly what we're doing with Z5. So basis what you've seen earlier, we are recommending content to you. So discoverability becomes much quicker. If you see something that you like, and if you actually view that content, the likelihood of you being open to our recommendation increases, and therefore the time you spend on our platform will increase.
So in that regard, the moment we have started implementing such a system where you're personally recommending a customer, what are the results that you've seen? For example, you're currently working for Z5, and these are being implemented, like you said. What is the outcome looking like? What is the change from them searching by themselves to them getting recommended and choosing from that recommendation?
So, I mean, honestly, I've just about joined Z5. I'm sort of still getting familiar with the recommendation engine and rates of response to the recommendation engine. So it's a little too early for me to comment on that.
Okay, not a problem. So I have a better question for you. In that case, for like I said, personalization is the key, right? What are the key data points that we can choose, like any brand can choose, in order to make use of that data points and create personalized customer experience? What are those top three or top four in your account?
So they obviously differ from industry to industry, but I'll give you an example of what we had done when I was at the Taj. So I worked with EMEA, which ran the loyalty program for Taj hotels. We had relaunched the program, and as part of that relaunch, we were trying new things. One of the things we started was something which we called what were they? I can't remember what they were called, but the intent was that if there is a certain type of customer, and I'll use the example of a consultant, right? A consultant usually travels to a new city on a Monday, and he travels back on a Thursday or a Friday. Now all of these guys were identified, people who used to spend 4 days in a hotel, and specifically business hotels. the campaign that we sent out to them was spend the weekend with us. Um, the intent of the campaign was that in a hotel, if you're spending the week in, let's say, a city like Chennai, right? Mahabalipuram is not very far from Chennai. He could get there in about an hour and a half, and he has access to a phenomenal Taj property over there, and he can actually fly his family in for a great weekend away. The intent being that he's able to then tell his family that, look, I know I spend a lot of time away from you guys, but then it's all worth it. That was the intent. And we then set up these trips, which we called. So if we notice that this person tends to spend a lot of time on hotels in the Konkan coast, and if he's missed out on a hotel, we'll tell him, look, complete this journey with us. And then we talk about that. If we know that this is a person who likes the hills a lot, we communicate to him about hotels in the hills. So the kind of data points we were collecting here, obviously, were a lot of data on the type of consumer, on his preferences from a hotel perspective, on how he tends to spend his time in the week and on the weekends. And also what we looked at were the points that this person had accumulated by virtue of staying with us so many nights, and then providing him a recommendation saying that, look, you have so many points. These are the hotels where you can redeem all of these. So these were all the data points which we used to actually send out these campaigns.
Personalized communication. So in that case, you like right now, I do understand that, like you said, customer loyalty has become not all about points, although that was usually what is considered the best key. Right now, if it's not all about points, but yet customers do get their loyalty points and they try to use them and redeem them, how can we leverage a loyalty program to drive personalized customer experience in your view? Yeah.
So loyalty points are just hygiene. Honestly, it's the price you pay for customer data. Otherwise, there's no reason for him to quote any personal information at the time of, for a hospitality chain, at least at the time of check-in. Therefore, you give him points in exchange for his data. What is it that you can do to personalize and to drive experience is that at the Taj, for instance, when we were relaunching the program, the ecosystem that the Taj operated in had changed considerably from the time that the program was launched initially, right? You had the Marriotts and the SPGs of the world which had come into India. You had the Indian consumer which had gotten a lot more mobile. And therefore, these people, Indians who traditionally were Taj Inner Circle program members, were now becoming members of Marriotts and SPGs and things like, and the Hyatts of the world. They were seeing value in it because when they flew out of the country, they could stay in a Marriott. When they traveled within India, they could stay in a Marriott. Now, how do you make Taj that much more valuable to this very consumer? That was a question we constantly kept asking ourselves. So while we said points is hygiene, yes, we don't want to overlook points. We made the top tier of the Taj the most valuable anywhere in the world. So the top tier, there was no comparison. What we also did was Taj has something which we call experiences. Now, these are things which you traditionally go to a resort and buy. And one example of this is, let's say, a dinner for two at the beach in the Maldives. Now, as you can imagine, these things are available for a lot of money. What we did for the top tier is we said that we obviously want to provide phenomenal experience for them. We provided in an envelope every time you reached the top tier, 13 of these experiences, and we said pick 3 of these for free. So when a customer went to, let's say, a Taj Fisherman's Cove in Chennai, he could go and he'd then be accompanied to an Olive Ridley turtle walk for free. He could do the dinner for two in Maldives for free and things like that. Now, what we noticed was that there were some customers who started to use them, and there were some customers who weren't using them. So we started to provide nudges to people who were not using them. People who were using them showed completely different behavior. They actually started to use a lot more of these experiences which were earlier not being used. Now, the intent was not for them to use new experiences by paying for them. The intent was to tell them that, look, we have experiences. So please, thank you for being a part of our top tier, and this is what you get. That sort of changed how people perceived the top tier of the Taj. A lot of people started talking about it. There was a lot of noise on social media, and a lot of people then started to push other tier members to actually get up to the top tier so that they could then experience these for themselves. Because like I said, a dinner for two at Maldives is really expensive. So you would rather just do it for free. So these were things that we provided along with the points to say that, look, we're an experiential brand. We're known for our customer service. When you say Taj, everyone knows the fact that from an Indian perspective, there is nothing that comes close in the kind of experiences that Taj provides, and that's what we attempted to amplify.
So while somebody, for example, any brand that wants to implement a great customer experience journey, what according to you are the pitfalls that they should avoid in order to not go through that headache of a bad customer experience? Yeah.
So this is something I went through myself. What the unfortunate part is that by virtue of being very, very long in a certain field, is you assume you know everything about it, and no one knows any better than you. So I think first go with a very, very open mind. Don't take anything for granted. Don't assume you know everything. The second is listen to what the customer is telling you. Absolutely anywhere, whether it is online or whether it is through any feedback mechanism you've built yourself. Listen to them. Also interact with the people who interact directly with customers, which in the case of the Taj was the front office staff, and Raymond is the staff at the store. So we were always told that we should really go spend time in stores, and over time, we did start to, and that made a lot of difference in the way we ran the program. But yes, listen to your customers, listen to store staff, and the last I think is you leverage technology. We started to do a lot of that towards the end, where we did a lot of POCs with a lot of different partners, with the attempt of understanding which one of these POCs actually work, not just from a ROI perspective, but also from a long-term customer value perspective. So while it may not pay off immediately, if you're able to understand from a customer that, look, I went through this experience and I really enjoyed it, like you said about Decathlon, right? If you're able to provide those experiences, now that experience didn't make you go back into the store and buy a bunch of other things. It did not. However, now that you have it in mind, you don't have to stand in a queue, and you're open to spending a little more time in the store and walking around and purchasing more things. So these are things that I think will really help drive value.
So I absolutely agree with you on this, because in the field that I've been in, loyalty industry, like one thing that used to say at every single point to an owner is interact, talk to your every department that you have. Let it be a restaurant, talk to your waiters. Let it be your stores, talk to your salespersons, because they have the most valuable information that will drive the key drivers for your loyalty program, or which can build much better customer experience. So now this is a tricky question. So now they say in the industry that the customer is the king. No matter what he says, it should go without having any doubts or questions. But at some point, like, we know the customer is at fault, and we don't know how to communicate it because we don't want to hinder their experience. So in a situation that is that's very fragile like that, how do you ensure that you're delivering good experience whilst you address their concerns?
So I think the best thing for you to do is to be very cognizant of the kind of brand you are. There are a bunch of things you're willing to do. You're willing to go the extra mile. There have been times when we at Raymond have replaced products multiple times, but then after a certain point in time, when you realize that the customer is just attempting to take you for a ride, at that time you put it very nicely that, look, this is as much as we're able to do. So at some point you should draw the line. But honestly, I think over a point of time we've realized that it doesn't cost you too much to actually indulge even these kind of customers, because these customers are very, very few and far between. There are significantly more genuine cases than there are not genuine cases, and any process or policy you're building should not be to safeguard yourself against this really small population, but to actually enhance experience of the much larger population, which is actually feeling the pain. So you do as much as you can, because honestly, in a brand like Raymond, let's say I have 1 out of 100 people who are being very, very unreasonable. What is it going to cost me to actually attempt to win him back into the fold, even if I have to replace his garments, let's say 4 or 5 times?
Okay.
If beyond that he's still being unreasonable, then yes, as a brand, we will take a call saying that, look, I'm sorry, but this is as much as we're able to do, and I apologize. That's all you can do.
I agree with you. I think that's again, if it's valuable to our business, then only we should be able to look at it and address it. So, speaking of value, we do understand that customer data is absolutely valuable. But during the pandemic, we also realized in a survey conducted by KPMG that customers are more than ever worried about their data, and they're more vulnerable. They feel insecure, and they feel they want to reach out and to be validated and assured, right? In that way, if you see, how can we navigate this very tricky path of COVID-19 and pandemic, take care of these vulnerabilities of a customer, yet give them a better experience? What is your take on it, and what can a brand do? Yeah.
Uh, See, I mean, I've heard arguments on both sides of this, where a lot of people have said that I'm very possessive about my data and where it is being used. I've, I'm sort of on the other end of the bandwagon where I say that if Google is taking my data and is making my life simpler, I have no problem with doing that. However, being in loyalty marketing, I understand that there are people who are worried about how their data is being used. I think the only thing I think what we should do uh, is when we're collecting customer data upfront is tell them constantly that look, this is the kind of data we're collecting and this is how your data is going to be used, and these are the ways by which you can opt out of this.
Mhm.
So every time we actually sent communication over SMS from Raymond, it was always accompanied by an opt out.
Mhm. Mhm.
What we tried to do also was over a period of time we tried to make opt in into the program a lot more uh, I mean, see, from a loyalty marketer perspective, you want this process to be as seamless as possible, right? At the time of billing, all I have to do is take a person's mobile number to enroll into the program, which is what we used to do for a very long time. Now, I don't want to add roadblocks to this. I don't want to add uh, a sort of roadblock, but some point I want to tell the customer that look, I am collecting this data and I am going to use this data for that. Many times the customer will say no.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, it's fine if he says no. All you can do at that point in time is to tell him that, look, the only reason I'm asking you for it is because, let's say, on your birthday, I'll give you 500 bonus points and things like that. But a lot of people still say no. Uh, so, yeah, the only way you can go past this is to keep the customer informed what you're collecting his data for, what you're collecting, and what you're going to do with it, and the way that he can stop you from using his data and delete. And from a brand perspective, the ability to delete all his data.
Okay. So I absolutely agree with you, because right now, even when we host anything, for example, during a webinar as well, we wanted to give an option to our customers, whoever signing up, attendees who are signing up for the webinar, a choice whether they want to be informed about our upcoming webinars or not, because we want to give that open understanding of participation, consent. So like I do agree, consent, integrity, and emotional empathy is all what we need right now. So like as I was saying this, we got a couple of questions from our participants. I'll go ahead and I'll ask a few of them.
Sure.
So this comes from an anonymous attendee. It says, if we are running across a business with 1,000 or 100 plus locations and receive feedbacks in tens of thousands every day, how do we ensure complaints are marked, resolved manually, which is a bit of hardship, calling personally to everybody? Is there any way we can sort this out without manually putting in effort? If yes, how do we do it?
Well, that's the whole thing of customer experience, right? You do actually have to speak to the customer. What we did was we received a large volume of feedback. Um, and I mean, even if you have stores across the country, what you do is you assign the person in charge of taking care of the customer the role of actually calling the customer to understand his problem. With us, what used to happen was a customer goes to a store. Let's say for some reason, I'll take a very weird scenario where the AC wasn't working. And in a city which is hot, when you walk into a Raymond store, you are expecting the AC to work, right?
Yeah.
So for some reason, the AC was not working that day, and this customer thought it was reason enough to complain, and he told us, and he complained about it.
Yeah.
The store manager actually called the customer and told him that, sir, we apologize. There was this issue. However, the next time you come, please call us and come so that we're able to tell you if the AC is working or not, so that you have a better experience.
Mhm.
Or if you're not able to come, tell us. We'll bring fabric over to your house and we'll show it to you there.
Mhm.
This person then has to go back into the application that we've got
Mhm.
uh, and enter the resolution over there and click submit.
Mhm.
Yes, it is a lot of work, but unfortunately, it has to be done. There is no other way around it.
So I think this brings about one of the experience that I also personally gone through is recently my spectacles got like they broke and I couldn't go because pandemic and also like certain other things that I was caught up with. So I was logged on onto Lenskart and that's where I was trying to understand if a frame fits me or not. And the immediate question I had in mind is, even though it has a virtual image rendering that happens, so you know how the specs looks on you, you're quite unsure whether you want to shop for a specs and then get stuck with a bad pair of sunglasses or any contact lenses. So the next thing after I shopped and I didn't purchase anything, I get a call from the customer center where they said, "Ma'am, I've seen you've logged on to Lenskart. How about we schedule a free trial of the best 100 frames that we have? So you can personally try them, see which one fits, which one doesn't." And I was surprised because I mean to be able to try it at the comfort of your house because they've seen me not going through the shopping cart itself speaks volumes, at least for somebody who doesn't have time. So yeah, like I said, it's manually having to put that effort is really, really important. So moving on to the next question we have is, how are self kiosks today valued in stores and in future?
I'm not sure what that means by self kiosks.
So self kiosks are, for example, if I walk into a McDonald's and me going to place an order at with the person, instead of that I go to a self kiosk and I take care of the order, give the feedback, and take care of the payment there itself. So
Oh,
is it valued in right now and in the future? What's your take on that?
uh, I'll use the same example you just mentioned, McDonald's. I almost never walk up to the counter anymore because of the fact that I have the self-serve kiosk in front of me. If I am intending to pay by card, I don't see why I should walk up to the counter, stand in a queue, and make that payment. Where uh, and I think McDonald's has done this phenomenally well. Uh, so I walk up to the store, I choose what I want. I can spend as much time as I want over there without worrying about the fact that look, there are people behind me who want to place an order. And once I have my order, all I do is I go and sit.
Mm-hmm.
And when my food is ready, the thing vibrates or someone will come and deliver it to me. So I think from a brand perspective, there are two advantages to this. One is obviously it reduces the whole crowding at the counter, and in COVID times that's even better.
Mm-hmm.
And the second is that it reduces my dependency on people. So while I do have people staffing my POS, I don't need people staffing this. Maybe one person taking care of 4 kiosks in case someone has an issue with understanding how it works. But otherwise, I think, uh, like I said earlier, leverage technology as much as you can to provide better customer experience.
Okay. But then I have a question to add to that. Would be yes, it does reduce a lot of effort for to take care in terms of the crowd and the line at the store. But would it also not steal that moment of interaction where you can create a moment of wow for the customer because you're personally having a discussion with him, talking to him, trying to get the vibe of how the customer is looking like. Hence, you know your TG, that's your target audience. So, what is your take on that? If self kiosks can do that?
Yeah, so I think what you do is you provide these interventions in scenarios where you're not able to improve customer experience by human interaction.
Mhm.
At Raymond itself, we had so in our Park Avenue stores, we run something called DIY, where basically a customer can take a shirt and customize a whole bunch of things about it. He can change the type of collar, the kind of cuffs,
Mhm.
um, how many pockets, and things like that.
Mhm.
Uh, Now, even though you have staff who's able to explain all of this to you, uh, that kiosk over there gives the customer the ability to change things on the fly and play things around with it himself. So it's a
Mhm.
lot more interactive for him, and because it's new, it also adds to that wow factor, which a salesperson is not able to provide by virtue of the fact that this is the kind of experience customer has been conditioned to all this while.
Yeah.
Now, in you walk into a Raymond store when I buy fabric to be stitched, that's exactly the experience, right? He'll tell you the same thing. Okay, sir, full sleeve bana do, cuffs aisa karo, French cuff karo, collar ye karo. He's doing the exact same thing. It's no different. We took that and we put it into and we use technology to deliver the same experience.
Mhm.
The consumer today is open to using technology.
Mhm.
In fact, he prefers using technology, and therefore you're providing the same experience to him on a screen which is literally which I think we were using 40-inch displays. Now the ability to view all of that on that large screen immediately on the fly and seeing what it looks like, what the finished product looks like, which in the case of tailoring, you're imagining it in your head.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I'll use the McDonald's example itself, right? Uh, Now on the menu behind the POS, how many items do you see? It's a scrolling screen. So you have to be cognizant of where your product is. You may miss a product or two, as opposed to this screen where you're able to scroll through at your own time and pace. If anything, this is much better experience. So isolate events that you're not able to amplify by human intervention and use those isolated events to provide a technology intervention for better experience.
That's a very great thought that you've shared. So moving on, the next question what we have is, what kind of ROIs do you really see in implementing loyalty programs, and how long does it take? And we have a second part of it, which I'll probably get once you answer this. Yeah.
Okay, this sounds like a question straight from my CFO, but no, I mean, loyalty programs take a little time to get going, only from the perspective that it takes a while for your customer to actually earn the number of points he needs to actually come back and make a redemption. So there are multiple ways you can evaluate the efficiency or the ROI of a program. One is you look at every campaign that you run, you do a test versus control, and you see how your test group is doing vis-a-vis control group. But these are isolated individual ways to evaluate the way a loyalty program works. Uh, the other ways are you look at the kind of benefit you're driving from a loyalty program member versus a non-loyalty program member. And from that, what I mean is basically a customer lifetime value. If the value of a customer enrolled in your program tends to increase year on year of him being associated with the program, then yes, your program is providing a return on investment. The other thing that we used to do is we used to look at the return on redemption. So every time a customer is making a redemption, if he's providing, let's say, a 3x value on the points redeemed, a 5x value on the points redeemed. So these were things we used to evaluate the value of the program. Now, there is no one number you can come to from an ROI perspective, but it usually tends to lie within a range that you're able to judge for yourself. And I mean, that's traditionally how I've always evaluated whether a loyalty program is doing well or not.
Okay. So the second part of the same question is, and also would like to know what's the real traction that comes from digital campaigns today via SMS, email notification, or any social media?
Uh, Again, depends on the industry. With Raymond, at least, which is predominantly an offline retailer, we saw a lot of traction from SMSs and emailers vis-a-vis campaigns that we ran on digital media. Because I mean, what tends to happen is that you see better reaction on digital if you actually have a journey that where the moment of truth is actually digital. We're sort of building. Raymond was sort of building its entire e-commerce website at that point, but offline presence was obviously a lot stronger. So digital definitely makes sense, but makes sense in a scenario where your moment of truth, which is your point of sale, is actually online rather than it being offline.
Yeah. So I agree with you completely. So what I also believe is you try to understand, do a lot of tests that you can to figure out whether this is working or not, and then you stick to the one that's working very well for you, and then you innovate from there on. So the last
Absolutely.
question we have from our attendees are: when you are launching a new product or a category, what kind of research we should do, we should involve, so that the product doesn't fail in giving customer experience after the launch?
Uh, so, I mean, I'll give you an example of what we were doing when Taj happened, right? When we were relaunching the program, the intent was, like I said, to provide great customer experience, and the way we could do that was actually uh, taking a version of the relaunch program, actually testing it out with a bunch of people. So the only way you can understand that is you take very distinct segments of the population you are trying to address, run interventions with that population, understand how each one of them tends to respond to that, and isolate incidents which you believe are going to reward you the most. So from our perspective, like I said, what we were trying to do was ring fence our best customers. We obviously didn't want them going off to a competing loyalty program or a competing hospitality chain. So we attempted to provide phenomenal experience to that segment. So while we were cognizant of feedback that everybody gave us, we were especially, I mean, we went out of our way to incorporate feedback from our best consumers. So the only way you can do it is test, test, test.
So then I think I have a follow-up question. For example, a brand does go ahead, even though the test results were great and they've launched it in the market, turns out they had a very miserable experience in terms of customer experience. So how can you get back from, how can you rise back from the ashes? Because to redeem themselves is a big deal right now, right? So after they failed. So in your take, how can a brand redeem itself after a negative experience that they've provided to a customer? And that to a large group, that is.
So I think that's sort of been done fairly often in the recent past. A lot of large brands have realized that that they've actually messed up, and they've actually come out and apologized for it. In the scenario that you're talking about, however, I think what's important is that you acknowledge the fact that you went wrong somewhere. You listen to what customers are saying about. So let's assume that we went out and launched a loyalty program which didn't do well. I think one of the ways you understand why it didn't do well is again to talk about the customers whom it was intended to influence. Understand from them why it didn't do well, apologize, change, and move on. Now I understand in a context of a very large business, change is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take very, very long. But the alternative is that you run with a program that is not performing to expectation. And over a point in time, if I had a CFO who's asking the exact same question that one person asked us some time ago, he's going to tell you shut the program down, because if anything, it's just a cost. So the only thing that you can do is listen for feedback and change, even if that change is going to take you a little longer to do.
Yeah. So I think here, I remember Mark Zuckerberg making the statement, if you don't try, you would never know. But if you did try and you fail, you can always apologize for that.
Absolutely.
That is something which I totally agree with you. So I think we have come to the end of the webinar. I think this is something which I would want to personally put out there is this is one of the webinars that we have conducted that has been such information rich and something to the T where we could understand the major points that can drive customer experience. So it's a great experience for me personally to have to be here interviewing you. So it's a quite an honor for me. Thank you so much for participating today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So here I think now we officially come to the end of our webinar, and all of the attendees who have asked us your questions, we are absolutely elated to have Mr. Sanjeev answer your questions. You all can follow Mr. Sanjeev on LinkedIn, Sanjeev Nishani. Please correct me if I'm wrong. That's you can follow him on LinkedIn and know much more valuable insights, his experience with customer loyalty, customer analytics, and customer experience. His absolute great work experience working with brands like EMEA Loyalty, working with Loyalty Rewards, and Raymond's itself speaks tons and volumes. And I really wish you all the best moving forward with your experience with ZeeFi and trying to build a great customer experience there as well. So we do understand that customer experience is not easy to achieve in during this pandemic time, and it's very important for to make sure that we do our best in order to achieve that. So I thank everybody again for participating in today's webinar. And this webinar is brought to you by Frugal University. The Frugal University is all about empowering and enabling today's young gen and your higher and senior management, marketeers, loyalty experts, and industry experts to empower themselves in the customer loyalty and customer analytics field. So in case if you'll have any questions with regards to the webinar, or in general, if you'll want to know more about customer experience, you can write to us at sales@frugal.ai, and I will be taking your leave for the day. Thank you so much, Mr. Sanjeev, for participating with me today.
Thank you.